Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're decoding something you've definitely felt, but, maybe never quite put into words. Think about your actual physical posture when you play a game. You've got that lean forward, tight grip on a controller, right? Contrast that with the super relaxed, casual way you might just tap your phone screen with one hand while riding the subway. Why is it that playing a game on your console feels fundamentally, completely different from playing on your phone? Well, it's not just about the hardware or the fancy graphics. It's actually about this hidden structure of play. So we're going to decode exactly why these two platforms demand completely different things from your brain, your time, and your attention.
Think about it kind of like this. Both are absolutely games, right? Just like sitting down for a long, focused dinner and grabbing a quick snack are both technically eating, but they're asking for something entirely different from your time and your current vibe. Sitting down with a console, that's like cooking a full-on meal. You put in the prep work, you carve out an hour or two, the effort is high, but man, the result feels substantial and filling. A quick tap on a mobile game, though, that's literally like grabbing a handful of almonds or making a quick cup of tea. It's fast, gives you that instant gratification, and it's just incredibly easy to jump back into over and over while you go about a busy day.
Okay, so Layer 1, the psychology behind play. Let's peel this back.
The core idea we really need to grasp here is that your attention is a resource. It is not a free gift. Games don't just, casually entertain us. They actively shape our expectations, our habits, and even our emotional rhythms. And they do this based entirely on how much mental bandwidth they demand from you at any given second. Seriously, game developers know exactly how much mental energy you've got left in the tank after a long workday, and they design these experiences to negotiate for that exact amount of bandwidth.
To put that into perspective, a console game aggressively protects your focus. It demands a much larger slice of your mental pie to build this deep, uninterrupted immersion. It's exactly like sitting down to read a thick, complex novel. You settle in, you find a quiet room, and you have to actively block out the outside world. But mobile games, they are brilliantly designed to just seamlessly fit right into the fragmented, chaotic little moments of your day. It's way more like checking a barrage of short text messages. Each individual interaction is super small, very punchy, but the habit of checking in, that's continuous.
So, how exactly do they manage this difference? Well, it all comes down to something called friction. Friction is basically the psychological boundary created by how hard something is to start. Think about it. When you sit down, turn on the TV, boot up the console, wait for the software to load, and finally pick up that controller, you are introducing a ton of friction. But here's the crazy part. That is actually a psychological feature, not a bug. That friction creates anticipation. It literally tells your brain, hey, this is a deliberate, committed play moment, which actually justifies your psychological investment. It makes you value the session so much more once it finally kicks off.
Let's think of it in everyday terms. Console play is like walking up to a heavy, locked front door. Opening it requires intentional effort, right? So crossing that threshold feels deliberate, it feels meaningful. Mobile play, on the other hand, thanks to the incredibly low friction of a smartphone that's probably already sitting right there in your hand, that feels like strolling down an open walkway. Entry is completely effortless. You're way more likely to wander back and forth across that walkway a dozen times a day, for sure. But you're going to commit a whole lot deeper once you put in the real effort to unlock and walk through that front door.
Now, once you're actually inside the game, you enter the gameplay loop. This is basically a universal psychological structure in game design. It goes like this. You do something, you get feedback, you adjust your strategy, and you repeat. Boom. But this exact same loop produces two wildly different effects depending on the platform you're using. Console games typically use this repetition to build satisfying mastery and complex skills. Mobile games, though, frequently use it to build habit and retention. They design the loop specifically to make sure you come back tomorrow. The repetition itself isn't bad by default. It's just that its underlying purpose is completely different.
Which brings us to a really powerful question. The next time you find yourself caught in a game's repetitive cycle, I want you to ask yourself, is this repetition helping me understand the game more deeply, or is it mainly just keeping me engaged for longer? Just pausing to actively consider that, it reveals a whole lot about the game's actual psychological blueprint.
All right, moving on to Layer 2, how design shapes experience.
You see, design is a shape. It's not just a decoration. A lot of folks tend to think visuals and graphics are the design. But honestly, the graphics are just the paint on the walls. The mechanics, the pacing, the progression systems, those are the actual floor plan. You can change the paint all day long, but if the floor plan is a maze, you are still going to get lost.
The underlying structural mechanics literally dictate how we move, how we think, and how we feel within the game, way more than the visual dressing ever could.
And because of this floor plan, the actual density of information has to dramatically shift depending on your context. Look at it this way. If you're settling into an armchair for the evening, a console can give you wider, heavily layered screens. It can throw a massive decision load at you and offer a slower, more extended feedback rhythm. But if you're standing on a crowded train or dealing with the minor panic of a dying phone battery, a mobile game has to compress all that space. It actively lowers the immediate decisions you have to make per moment and fires off rapid, frequent feedback just to keep you comfortably anchored, even with constant interruptions.
This physical logic extends right down to the literal tips of your fingers. Holding a controller? That's like steering a bicycle. You've got analog sticks, triggers, bumpers. They provide this highly embodied, tactile, and precise control system. It fully supports complex timing and deep spatial awareness. But a touchscreen? That's literally tapping frictionless glass. It invites direct, rapid contact and naturally favors simpler, sweeping actions and short, snappy gameplay loops over complex physical coordination.
Because these interactions are so fundamentally different, the very definition of progress has to mean something entirely different based on the platform. It's honestly a shift in player identity. On a console, progress is usually about story advancement, skill improvement, unlocking those sweet new abilities. You're the hero growing in power, right? You feel like you became better. On mobile, though, the player is much more like a manager tending to a garden over time. Progress is defined by daily rewards, steady resource accumulation, and keeping up streaks. Your system state improved. So it's deep mastery on one hand versus steady, consistent accumulation on the other.
Which brings us to Section 3, the Epiphany. You are a systems reader. Let's wrap this all together.
When you take a step back and look at the psychology and the design together, you finally get the complete view. And honestly, the realization here kind of neutralizes a lot of that tribalism we always see in gaming, because neither platform is better by default. They are simply, expertly, deliberately crafted to serve entirely different moments in our lives. Console gaming optimizes for depth, mastery, and focused attention for when we actually have the time to give it. Mobile gaming optimizes for frequency, convenience, and daily habits for when we're on the move. Both are just wildly different relationships between human attention, game design, and emotional reward.
So I want to leave you with this final, kind of provocative thought to really challenge how you interact with interactive media from now on. The very next time you boot up a console or tap an app on your phone, ask yourself this: what kind of player is this game trying to create in me? Keep that question in the back of your mind, and I promise you'll never look at a game the exact same way again.